Good morning. Wow, sunny today. I really got to get one of those lamps that I talked about last week. Those I think I called them a halo lamp, but I think they're selfie lamps. But I saw them on Taobao and they're cheap, so I think I'm gonna buy one because I can see that there's shadow. I got shadow over here and sunlight over here. But anyhow, um, wow, busy week. I saw a film last night, which I'll talk about shortly. So I was busy writing it up to get it on my website, howard4film.com, howardfor film.com. So if you're not a subscriber and you want to read what I write, check it out. I was busy just now with my service provider for my website trying to figure out somebody wanted to change their email address and didn't know how to. Hi, Donna. Donna and I have the same birthday, but I'm older. Anyhow, let me talk about what's going on this week with films in Hong Kong. There's a lot. There's a lot that opened this week. They're all like regional films, that I don't cover too well. But I am going to talk about one film, a Hong Kong film that opened yesterday, in a second. But first, let me talk about Happy Season, which is Netflix's. Well, it's not Netflix. It's Hulu. Hulu's representational holiday film. Big news. Now, I get that the LGBTQ community wants to see more representation in Hollywood films. I'm all for it. And it's not surprising then that a lot of people are really excited about this one, because here you have two lesbians who are front and center in the story, and that's pretty exciting. But let me ask you, is it worth all the hoopla? Is this film really worth it? Well, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about what this film is about, Happiest Season. We have PhD student Abby, who's played by Kristen Stewart. Everybody knows Kristen Stewart. She's been in a lot of films, most notably the Twilight Saga franchise. But lately she's been in the reboot of Charlie's Angels, Personal Shopper, which I actually liked, Still Alice, which I also liked, Underwater, which was pretty awful, JT the Roy, which was different, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which was very disappointing. What else? Cafe Society, that was a waste of time. But anyhow, she's Abby, as I said, and Abby is in a happy relationship with Harper, who is played by Mackenzie Davis. People would know her from Blade Runner 2049 and Terminator Dark Fate. Tully, she was one of the co-stars. And Harper is a reporter for a large Pittsburgh newspaper. Now, with Christmas around the corner, Harper decides to invite Abby to come to her family home for the holidays. The only problem with that idea is Harper's never told her uptight parents, Tipper and, what's the father's name? Ted. Tipper and Ted. Tipper's played by Mary Steenburgen. Wonderful actress. Ted's played by Victor Garber from Toronto, my hometown. And also her uber competitive sisters, Sloane, played by Alison Brie. We just saw her recently in The Rental. Of course, she was in The Disaster Artist, and people would probably know her best from her TV work on Glow, Community, and Mad Men. 3 TV shows all at the same time. And also, we have her other sister, Jane, who's played by the film's co-writer, Mary Holland, who had a short stint on Veep, which I've actually never seen, but I hear good things about it. Now, so she never told her family that she's gay. Now, even worse than that, she doesn't even let Abby know that she's still in the closet, as far as her family's concerned, until they're too close to her parents' home to give Abby a chance to back out. And complicating matters further, we have her father, Ted, who is a councilman. He is running, or he's hoping to run for mayor of their Norman Rockwell-ish town, somewhere in Pennsylvania. And the pressure is on Harper not to create a scandal. Now, the only problem with that, from an audience point of view, is one of her sisters is married to a black man. So, you know what? I think the father's pretty used to scandal by now. To me, that was a pretty lame excuse. Oh, I can't tell my father I'm gay because that would be a scandal. Hello, your sister is married to a black man and has children with him. Anyhow, so needless to say, the combination of the holidays, family, politics, and a couple of Harper's old flames showing up, it all puts a huge strain on her relationship with Abby. Now, that's what the film. I'm not going to get anything more about the film. Now, look, hooray for Hollywood for backing a holiday film where the gay characters are real people and they do lots of on-screen kissing. But why did this have to be such a vanilla story? In fact, I think I said the same thing last year about Love, Simon, but at least that film is targeted to a young audience. Here we have a 30-ish year old woman who's afraid to come out of the closet. Come on, this is not 1990. This is 2020. This shouldn't be an issue anymore. Now, many will argue that baby steps are better than no steps at all, and I know that's exactly what I said with Love, Simon. But is it too much to ask for an LGBTQ holiday film where the issue is something more than being in the closet? Come on. Now, as Abby's BGF friend, I guess I don't have to say friend because BGF implies friend. So as Abby's BGF, John, who's played by the wonderful Dan Levy, also from Toronto, tells her everyone's coming out journey is different. So perhaps, and that's a fair comment, but perhaps the director and other co-writer, Clea Duval, who also was in Veep, maybe she'd given a thought to what studios are prepared to go for in 2020. Maybe this is the best they can do in 2020, where the issue is coming out of the closet. For me, I would have written a very different story that nixes the Abby characters, Case 2, altogether, and instead involves Harper reuniting with Riley, who's played by the wonderful, always wonderful Aubrey Plaza, and have Riley, by the way, is her secret flame, one of the flames, one of her past loves, is her secret flame that she wronged many years ago. So to me, I think a better story would have been she's single, she comes back home, she sees Riley, she realizes that she screwed up with Riley many years before, apologizes, they get back together again, and everybody lives happily. And then she comes out to her parents. Everybody lives happily ever after. To me, this would have been a better story. Now, unfortunately, we have Riley, who is a miserable lesbian living a lonely life. Doesn't she deserve some happiness too? I'm okay. But given what we're given, though, I'd say Happiest season is no worse than 98% of the other Christmas rom-coms that we're subjected to at this time every year. I dare say it's a damn sight better than last year's insipid Last Christmas. Oh God, I hated that movie. At least Happiest season has Levy and Plaza in it. I'd give money to see the two of them in a film anytime. They were the best part of this film. It's not a horrible film. It's not the film that it could have been. Well, maybe it couldn't have been, but I just wish it would have been. Let's put it this way. It's not the film that I wish it would have been. All right, there you go. Now, Happiest season opened yesterday in Hong Kong cinemas because our cinemas here are still open. But if your cinemas aren't, and you have Hulu, you can watch it there because it's streaming there. Also started streaming there yesterday, I believe it was. So we got like this global rollout. But because our cinemas are open, we get to see it on the big screen. So that's Happiest season. It's the most representational time of the year. Oh, by the way, American friends, happy Thanksgiving weekend. Okay, the second film I want to talk about also opened yesterday. It's a local film called Find Your Voice. Oh, that just warms you all over. Find Your Voice. Now, Hong Kong cantopop legend Andy Lau, he must have been planning to build an addition onto his house for him to agree to put his name, to attach his name to this super sappy singing film, Find Your Voice. It was filmed in 2017, but for some reason it's only being released now. Not sure why it took 3 years, but anyhow. Now in this movie, and that throat clear was not, the coffee does help, but I actually did that for effect. Lau plays Joseph Lim, a music conductor of apparent note. No pun intended. Now, after his college choir, located somewhere in the U.S., fails to perform as well as expected, Lim gets called back to Hong Kong by Headmaster Lo, played by musician and environmental activist, which I didn't even know about, but I found that out. Lo, Hong Kong guy, and the elderly, he's only 8 years older than me, but he looked a lot older. The elderly but genial principal of a Band 3 school. Now, if you're not familiar with the Hong Kong education system, the underachievers and the undesirables go to Band 3 schools. These are, the bad kids. the troubled students go to band 3 schools. Now, Lowe and the principals of a few other such schools agreed to send 33 of their most difficult students to a fictional music academy where Yim is not only expected to whip them into shape, he's given a mere 9 months to get them ready to compete in an inter-college course competition. Now, forget about whether these kids know the difference between a sharp and a flat or what syncopated rhythm is. There can be miracles if you believe. And yes, they do sing that song in this movie. Now, unfortunately, it's going to take a whole lot more than just miracles for you to believe this steaming pile of schmaltzy doggy-doo. If there's an encyclopedia of cliches out there, director and co-writer Adrian Kwan, he did a film a couple years ago called Little Big Master, which was not too dissimilar to this film. He must have combed through it and taken the worst ones and used them here. Find Your Voice counts them down like America's Top 40. First, we have the girl who cuts herself because she's not worthy until Yim tells her that she is. Now, in terms of light bulb moments, that was a supernova. You know, it's like, you know, she had just cut her wrist, and then he says, you're worthy. And she goes, oh, yes, you're right, I am. And suddenly she never wants to cut her wrist again. We then have the boy who solves his problems through violence thanks to behavior that he learned from his father, who uses his mother as a punching bag. Now this boy, he wears, I think it's this arm, he wears a cast on his arm for the whole 9 months, except for one scene where it's curiously missing. Oops, somebody forgot. You know, the continuity person made a little bit of a mistake there. But in any case, Yin doles out some Yoda-like wisdom to him, and he too decides that the future is suddenly so bright he's got to wear shades. You know, he decides, you know, a couple of the kids are sitting around and they decide, you know, before they didn't have a future, you know, they were going to end up in dead-end jobs if they were lucky, and now they see, oh, you know, they have a future, so they ask this boy what his plans are. I won't tell you what his plans are, but it was so ludicrous. I mean, my colleague and I just burst out laughing because it was just so ridiculous. But anyhow, then we have, but it gets worse, you know. Then we have the girl who has nonverbal autism. Now, Yim, who has no training in this area whatsoever, brings her out of her shell, and miracle of miracles, she has the singing voice of an angel. It's like, oh, of course, you know, that happens all the time, you know. Now, each of his students has something going on, either inside their head or at home, and Yim knows exactly what to say or do at the right time. It's just, oh, it's wonderful. Now, this over-the-top sentimentality and tears, lots of tears. I didn't know Hong Kong people were such crybabies. I mean, everybody was crying in this film. You know, it's enough to put you into a diabetic shock. But this is the pièce de résistance. Pièce de résistance. There's a plot revelation involving him coming late in the story that no one seems to blink. You know, they hear about it. Oh, actually, they don't even hear about it. You know, you got to assume they hear about it. But suddenly, you know, there's this big revelation, and it's like, yeah, whatever. You know, it is so huge that in the real world, it would be a deal killer for sure. Now, the only thing good about this film, I have to think, what good thing can I say about this film? It's that it's only 95 minutes long. But even then, I had to look at my watch twice. Now, interestingly, Yim, in a voiceover, says that if he's lazy, the audience will notice. It's too bad the director didn't take his own words to heart. This was lazy writing. And you know what? I noticed. I don't know if anybody else knows. My colleague knows. But I don't know if the rest of the audience knows. Find Your Voice, as I said, opened yesterday in Hong Kong. You have been warned. If you do see this film and you don't like it, don't come crying to me. Okay, the last film, I have to save something good for the end, you know, I have to say. And the last film is called The Painted Bird. Now, unfortunately, it might be a little bit difficult to find where you live. It's not playing in our cinemas. I don't know if any of the streaming services here in Hong Kong are carrying it. But you might, I want to say you should actually look for it because it's a really good film, and it's a difficult film, but it's a really good film. So it's called The Painted Bird. It's a Czech. There's a few countries involved in the production, but basically the director is Czech, and some of the actors are Czech. Now, just to give you a bit of background, a dear friend of mine, Alex Kurzem, is a Holocaust survivor. He lives in Melbourne, and about 20 years ago, well, up until about 20 years ago, he managed to, the story of how he managed to survive when everyone else in his family had died was his secret and his alone, until his son Mark wrote a book about it. Now, the book is called Mascot, M-A-S-C-O-T, and in the book, Alex says that he ran away from his parents' home in Belarus. This was in about 1940, I'd say, eventually becoming a mascot for the Latvian SS and hiding his Jewish heritage from everyone, including his own family, for decades, up until about 20 odd years ago. I guess about 25, probably about 25 years ago now. Now, over the ensuing years, Alex has been put through the ringer by people all over the world who say that his story is just too incredible to be true. Now, I'll concede that Alex may have embellished some parts of his story. As I said, I've known him for about 20 years, probably close to 25 now, about 23 years. And even in that time, the story has embellished a little bit. So, you know what, I'll concede that, maybe not all of it is true, or maybe there's parts that are, a little bit exaggerated, whatever. But the bottom line is the photos are there and DNA doesn't lie. Alex is Jewish and he was a Nazi mascot. To me, this is the thing that people who are screaming about and saying that this is a lie are forgetting. He's Jewish and he was a mascot. We have proof and we have DNA. So anyhow, now here we have American-Polish novelist, or we had American-Polish novelist Jerzy Kosinski. He's the guy who wrote Being There, the Peter Sellers' last on-screen movie. He wrote the book. He also wrote a book in 1965 called The Painted Bird. And that book is not too dissimilar from Alex's own experiences. Now, it's the story of a boy who wanders from village to village in war-torn Eastern Europe, trying to stay alive while hoping to find his family. At the time that this book was written, Kosinski said that the story was autobiographical, but he later retracted that statement and admitted that it was fiction. And, perhaps it's because of that book that Alex's book has met with so much skepticism. Now, over the years, and up to Kosinski's suicide in 1991, the author was also under fire over claims of plagiarism, because some people said there was another book, I think it was a Polish book if I remember correctly, that was written many years before, that's very similar. And also he was accused of employing a ghostwriter or even a team of ghostwriters on this book because the English was quite good for somebody who was an immigrant at that point, a recent immigrant at that point in 1965. I don't know. But anyhow, as controversial as it is, his story, The Painted Bird, has now been made into a film of the same name by Czech director Václav Marhul, who also wrote the screenplay. I'm not familiar with any of his other films. Now, unlike in the book, where the boy's ethnicity is ambiguously left as either Jewish or Roma, we don't know what he was, in the film he is implied to be Jewish. We actually don't know for sure. There's everybody says that he's Jewish, but we actually don't. He doesn't say that he's Jewish, but we see a picture of his family, and as a Jew, I can say, yeah, they were Jewish. But anyhow, as the film opens, we have a 10-year-old boy who's played by Czech actor Peter Kotlar, who is wonderful in this film. He's living with his aunt in the countryside somewhere in Central or Eastern Europe. His parents have gone off. They don't say why his parents have gone off, but you sort of, you figure it out, and have left the boy with a woman for his own safety. But when the old lady suddenly dies, the boy takes off to look for his family. He walks over to another village where he's assumed to be evil because of his dark complexion. This is probably why in the book people may have assumed that he was Roma. Now, he's taken in by an old healer who exploits his alleged skills for profit. And as time goes by, he moves from one village to another, and each time he's subjected to psychological, physical, and sexual abuse by the adults who take him in. Now, he eventually comes under the care of Mitka, who's played by Barry Pepper, who was recently in the Crawl film. And of course, people would know him from the Maze Runner films if you saw them. And Mitka is a very kind Russian soldier, but even he can't, and this is also why it's similar to Alex's story, but even he can't protect the boy when the war comes to an end. So the boy finally ends up in a home for war orphans, but by then his spirit is completely broken. Now, Marvel shot this film over 16 months, and I'm guessing that he shot it in sequence because the boy seems to age. His features mature as the story goes on. In the initial scene, he does look like a 10-year-old boy, and by the end he looks like a 12-year-old boy. That's pretty hard to well, I suppose you can do it with makeup, but he seems to have lost his baby fat towards the end. Now, international audiences will no doubt spot a few familiar faces in the cast, including German actor Udo Kier. He was in Downsizing and Blade. He was in the film Blade with Wesley Snipes. There's Stellan Skarsgård, Swedish actor, fabulous actor, who was in Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. He was most recently in TV's Chernobyl, who was fantastic in that series. There's Julian Sands, who we haven't seen in ages. And Julian Sands, of course, was the star of A Room with a View way back, 30-odd years ago. And Harvey Keitel, who's always wonderful. And do I have to say what films Harvey Keitel was in? If not, if you don't know, look them up. Now, the director made an interesting choice here. He had everybody speak something called Interslavic, which is a semi-constructed language that was created to facilitate communication between the people of the various Slavic countries. I had never heard of Interslavic, but there you go. Now, in that way, he was able to maintain both the anonymity of the location and account for the differences in pronunciation spoken by the non-native cast. You had not only these, you had German, you had Swedish, you had British, you had an American actor, and you had actors from, Czech and Ukraine and a few other countries, and, they all had to speak some language to communicate. So they spoke in this, what's called Interslavic. Is it a language? I don't know if you call it a language. I guess it's a language. But anyhow, I thought that was quite interesting. Now, the film premiered at the Venice Film Festival in September of 2019 and had its North American premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival 1 week later. Both screens had its share of audience members who walked out due to the relentless scenes of brutality, which there are, I'll admit it. But at the film screening at the Warsaw International Film Festival a few weeks later, it received an 8-minute standing ovation. Now, if it's any consolation, if you're watching this film, the closing credits assure audiences that A, no animals were injured in the filming, and B, adult body doubles were used for the sex scenes involving children. I can't say I've ever seen that one before, but I'm glad it was there. A little bit of a relief, because there's one scene that the boy is involved in, and you think, oh my God, but thankfully it was a body double. Now, as I said, I'll admit there are more than a few scenes that can be difficult to watch, and the film is close to 3 hours. It's 169 minutes. You'll no doubt be checking your watch more than once. But if you stick with it, you will, as the audience in Warsaw did, you will be rewarded with a very rare cinematic experience. It is a very, very powerful film. It's difficult to watch, and it's very slow, but really powerful. Now, the film was nominated in 11 categories at the 2020 Czech Lion Award, so it's the Czech version of the Oscars. It ended up taking home 9 trophies, including Best Film, Best Director, and Best Cinematography. I think it's one of the top, 5, 6, 7 films in Czech history that have won so many awards. At Venice, it took home the UNICEF Award, which is traditionally given to audiences given to a film that best addresses children's rights issues. Now, depending on where you live, let's say if you live in America, it's available now on Hulu. So I don't know if you've got Hulu, check it out. If you've got other streaming services, check it out. As of now, there are no plans to bring it to Hong Kong cinemas. I don't know if it'll come to Hong Kong. It's a shame if it doesn't. But really, as I said, it's an incredible story, very, very powerful and thought-provoking. It's probably one of the best films I've seen this year, but very challenging to watch. So if you don't mind being challenged, go for it. That's called The Painted Bird. Okay, 8:57 in the morning. I don't like talking past 9 o'clock. and I got to get to work. So have a great weekend. Have a great week. Please remember to wear your mask when you're in public and do all those other things you're supposed to be doing. The virus is not coming yet. Well, it's coming, but it's not coming tomorrow. So we got to stay safe. Be well. See ya.